Okay, what I've discovered is that some fonts won't let you extrude them or press pull them, mainly just because of the way they're designed, the way the certain parts of the text overlap. But that's not really an issue, and I'm going to show you why, because you don't really need to extrude it. What we're going to do is start a sketch, and we're going to put it on this face here. Make sure that face is highlighted. You notice how when I hover over it, it turns a lighter gray. And make sure this is oriented the way you want it. And now we'll put some text on it of a font that I found that I know it will not extrude. And we'll just center this. If you take, see, notice how the cursor is that little blue box with the cross in the middle of it. If you want this text to be centered on everything, put it up on the upper left corner, drag down to the, actually don't even drag, just move the mouse down to the lower right corner, and then you click the mouse button, and you can start putting in, whoops, I don't want it all caps. Start putting in your text. We'll change this to, say, this font that I know it will not extrude this font, and that's why I want to show you this. I'm going to leave everything pretty much just the way it is. If you want to get it centered, notice I've got this one here where it centers the text to itself. Then this one here, it'll center the text up and down inside the whatever parameters you when you first laid out the text box. Alright, we'll just click OK, then we'll click Finish Sketch. Now we want to engrave this into that metal. So over here where it says Design, click on that, then click on Manufacture, and this is where you generate your G code at. So you have this, and what you want to do up here, you want to create setup, and you want to create a new setup, and here's where you start defining things that you will use. Number one is you should select a machine. Now I've already entered in my Fox Alien machine, so I just select that one. You can call me and I'll tell you how to go about getting it in there and stuff like that. Before I do anything else, I go over to stock. Now this is a fixed size box. You can put relative size box, but in this case we're using a fixed size box as we're not machining down the box. It's already the size that it is, and we're going to leave the box that size. So it's a fixed size box. For some reason this always defaults to a 1/2 inch thick. The rest of the stuff, 5 inches by 5 inches, is correct. But I remember specifically we made this a 1/4 inch thick box. So I'm just going to type 0.25 in there. Then go back over to this here, and you want to select your 0 point of origin. If we put this askew a little bit so you can see it, you'll notice these white dots all over the place. In the middle and in each corner and in the very center here. You want to select one of those to be your point of origin. One of the better places to do most stuff is with this one that lies right on top of the stock in the lower left hand corner. So for right now, you just click on that. You'll notice you have your axes arrows here. Your Z axis should be pointing up, and if you move this around, you'll notice that it is pointing up. And the other ones, it's best to have the positive. This shows you the positive. So your positive X is going to the right, which is correct. Your positive Y is going back here, which is correct. Then that setup is pretty much done. One of the things I like to do is on program name or number, I like to change this. And what we're going to do is call this engrave test. You can put in there whatever you like, and that'll just, you'll see where that'll come in handy here in a minute. Click OK. Now we want to engrave this. So in 2D, down here to engrave, you see it's got a little picture there of a tool carving on some text, and lo and behold, that's kind of what we want. So we'll click on engrave. Over here you want to select the tool, and I'm going to select one of my V bits just for grins. Let's see here, we'll just go engrave chamfer bit. It's a V-bit 30 degree. I happen to know that's one of the generic ones that came with the Fox Alien machine. Now you notice it puts it down here. If you want, you can edit it from up here, but let's not get into all that right now. Let's just accept that this is here, and we'll go select. Now we've got our bit. It's kind of hovering over the thing. You can change your feeds and speeds down here, and we'll get into that later. You don't want to really get into that right now because that will be a much longer video. The next tab right here, notice this is the tab that we're on, where it says it's got a little bolt there. It looks like, I guess it's supposed to be a tool, but to me it always looks like a screw or a bolt. But at any rate, the one next to it is where you define what you want to engrave. So you click on that, and contour selection. Start selecting contours, and all those contours are pretty much selected at this point. Now we go over here, and these are the different heights. Like the bottom height, right now it's defining it. Well, let's go through these from top to bottom. Your retract height, that's where the bit is going to rise up to as it goes between cuts. Clearance height is where the bit rises up to when it heads from the point of origin to the first cut. Feed height, I'm not really sure. If you hover it over it though, it'll tell you exactly what the feed height is. So it sets the height that the tool rapids to before changing to the feed plunge rate, and so on and so forth. The top height, you can go from selected contours. I usually like to use the stock top for the top height. And the bottom height from the stock top, is a good place to start. But let's say you want to make it, it's at 1/4 of an inch. Let's say we want to engrave that down 1/16 of an inch. So we'll put in a -.0625 for 1/16 of an inch. Then that's where it'll stop engraving. If we look at this on the side, notice the one in the color of the one that says bottom. That you notice is, look at the dark blue one. It's going to be hard to distinguish. See where that lies? That's would be roughly 1/16 of an inch if you measured it out. But that's what it wants to do. And that's what we told it to do. Over here, these are passes. You can set the number of passes if you want to do multiple depths. You can set all that in here. We're just going to leave this alone for right now. This is the thing where you can set how the bit enters the piece and stuff like that. We'll just leave that like it is for right now. And this should generate a path here in just a second. Now you notice it's got all the yellow lines. Those are the retract heights as it's jumping between the different paths. What I really like about Fusion is it has a great simulator. Up here where it says actions, you'll notice this thing is supposed to be a tool, but like I said, I think it looks like a screw. But at any rate, click on that. That's for simulate, and you'll get this screen. The stuff over here on the right now we can just ignore. It'll be stuff that you actually, let's change one thing here where it says tool. It has holder. Just click on that arrow and change it to just flute. That way it'll just show you the actual tool, not some hypothetical holder that you probably don't actually have, because I know what kind of machine you have. I know you don't have one of those holders. This will just show you the actual working bit. Now this down here at the bottom of the screen are the play buttons for it. There's a speed control, fast forward, fast back, all the way, reset all the way to the front or all the way to the back. Let's try running this and see what it does. And it's busy carving out. Now while it's doing that, there are things you can do here that will help you visualize what it's doing. Like you can change the mode from standard to fast 3-axis only, and I've never really noticed a big difference in that, so I don't know what good it does. Colorization, you can color the material like this and look at it that way. You can color the tool and look at it that way. Like I said, there's a lot of different things you can color in there in the colorization. Sometimes the material is a good thing to color, because it just looks cool. You can make that material transparent if you want, and it'll look like that. One of the things that's really helpful I like to do is while it's running is click on the front up here on the cube. Click on where it says front, and that'll give you an idea of how it's carving down into the material. And it looks like by default on a lot of the stuff it's taking 2 passes. You see where that little pink ball is there? That's showing you it's taking this path, and it's going to take all of this top blue stuff off first, and then it'll dig down a little bit farther and take off everything on the lower level of the blue stuff. Like I said, that's really helpful. Now, if you wanted to speed this up, you can just move that slider down here over a little bit, and all of a sudden it gets real fast. We'll look at the front again and see what it's doing. Also, one of the things this will do pretty much naturally is as it comes out of a letter, it'll come out in such a way that it'll leave a sharp point in the letter, and you can't really see that in the simulation, but when it's actually engraving, it pretty much should do that. And there's lots of different settings you can set to control that. I don't know for sure that we've set it to actually control that, but typically that's what it does. It'll ramp up out of the letters. Now these letters aren't really very sharp to begin with. If we close this, pretty much, since that's a V bit, it's gonna, if you carve that on a piece, you would see the sharp point of the V bit running along through the center of all these letters. And depending on how thick the lettering is, the strokes on the lettering would depend on whether or not it has to do clearing out of there, or because of the size and shape of the V bit, it'll just need to go through the center of it. And so those are all variables. I would suggest when you start doing this, instead of wasting metal, get some cheap scrap wood. MDF is a good one to use, and just put it in there and see how it carves on it, and see what kind of results you're getting before you actually start putting a bit to the metal, because that's more expensive. Any rate, so let's say that you've done this and you like the way it looks and that's what you want. Then you go up here to actions, and where it says G1, G2, that will process your G code. So if you click on that, pretty much you need to know where it'll leave this part alone. This is where the configuration folder is. That's going to be just fine. You might want to change your output folder to a directory that you will be able to get to and find easily without having to dig and search all over your hard drive. So that's a good way to do it. These little buttons will let you browse for a folder. I have a G code folder I like to use that'll save it to them. And an extension, for the most part, you'll be using .nc. There's the program name. Remember when we typed that into the setup, You can change this at this stage to anything you want, really. You don't need to keep it Engrave Text. I have this set where I have another editor that will automatically open when it gets done posting the G-code, which is why this box here is checked. So if we click Post, then it'll ask you again for the actual file name, and it'll ask you to put it in that folder that you defined. Or you can change it to a different folder at this point if you want to. Or you can change the name again if you want to. It's all up to you. Let's just click Save, and this will take just a second to post it. And here comes the editor that I told you about. You can set up one of these editors too. It's pretty easy, but it's nice. I like to look at the G code that I just created. I'm not an expert in G code. I do know a lot about it, but I'm not an expert. But you can scroll down through it. For one, I like to see how many lines of code I generated, and in this case 10,389 lines of code that it generated up to the end program, the M30 command, which ends the program. For just a simple engraving like this, that's actually not too bad. Engravings can take an awful lot of G code. Simple stuff like if you just drew a line, it's very simple G code. If you wanted to trace this, so if we take this and we'll do another 2D, we'll do a 2D trace. That'll be a lot different. We'll leave the same tool on there. We'll select this stock just like we did before. Everything else we're going to pretty much leave the same, except for you'll see a place where we need to change it. This is all good. Don't worry about feed height and all these for right now. Over here is where you can set how deep this is on a trace. See, it's a little bit different than the other one. So what we will do, axial offset. That's how far down you want to send the bit. So let's send it here, minus 0.0625. That's a 1/16 of an inch. And then we want to do more than one pass. Let's say we want to take it in 2 passes or whatever. You can also have the maximum step down. Let's say we know that bit, and we know that the maximum it'll step down is 0.04. So it's going to take two steps. Oh, not 23, excuse me, 2 steps. And we don't want to order it by depth in this case. We want it to pretty much concentrate in one area and finish it and then move on to the other area. So we'll take away order by depth. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes not. In fact, this case it's probably be good to have it on, but we'll just see what happens with it off. You can do both up and down milling. You can set chamfers. You don't need to worry about chamfers. Stock to leave. If you want to leave stock, you don't need to worry about that right now. This is just to get you going. We'll ignore this tab again and just click OK. It'll take a second to generate the path. And let's see up here the simulate. We'll see how that simulates. Now you notice it looks a little different. So it's going to go by real fast, so I'm going to slow this down just a little bit. Hit the play button, and that might be a little too slow, so we'll speed it up and watch it do its thing. One of the things that's nice to do on trace especially is look at it from the side. Now for some reason you notice this top line's a little above the stock, and then it's got the tube below the stock. That first one will actually start cutting something. It's the tip of the bit will actually be going into the stock. That's like that's hard to describe. Just kind of ignore it. And you'll notice also, since we left it, we took away order by depth. We can run through that again. See, watch, it'll carve out this section first until it's done. Then it moves over to the next section until it's done. And I'll keep doing that till it's done. Let's close this. Let's go over here to trace and we'll edit that. Then we'll go over to here and we'll order it by depth this time. And you'll see what it does, the difference in what it does and how it does it. We'll go back up here to simulate and then we'll play it. Now if you watch it, you'll see that it will do the entire face, one pass across the entire face, and then it'll do the second pass across the entire face, and then the third pass across the entire face. So at any rate, while waiting for this to finish, I hope this video helps you. And like I said, don't worry about if you can't extrude the text, because you really don't need to, because you're going to be carving it anyway, and it'll carve out just fine. Like I said, this text, I tested, it will not extrude. It gives me the same error message that you were getting when you were trying to extrude your word that said welcome. This was behaving just the same, and I found a few others that were the same, like Canterbury won't extrude. Most of the scripts won't, just because of the way they overlap and intersect. Most of the regular plain type of fonts, like Times New Roman and Arial and all those, will extrude. And so it's basically, if a text has overlapping areas like this, it probably won't. You can always try it. And if it doesn't have overlapping areas, and most likely it will, but in either case, it'll all carve out, it'll all engrave, and that's all you need to really be concerned with, because that's ultimately what you're doing with it. So it would be nice maybe to see what your extruded text looks like, and sometimes that would come in handy, especially if you're making raised letters. You'd want to extrude it up out of the piece and then tell it to face off the stuff surrounding the letters. Let's close this. And that's basically it. Like I said, hope this helps, and I know you'll have questions.